Hey everyone, and welcome back to Calm Coding for another deep dive into the wild world of cybersecurity. I'm Cody, and I'm here with Katie to break down some of the latest cybersecurity news.
Hey, everybody.
We've got a pretty big stack of articles for this deep dive.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, data breaches, espionage, ransomware.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot to process.
It is.
So have you been feeling kind of overwhelmed by all the cybersecurity news lately?
It definitely feels like every single day there's another headline about another attack or another breach or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
So hopefully we can help you make sense of it all in this deep dive and figure out what's most important and what you should actually care about. We're going to talk about unsecured databases, some major insurance companies getting hit with some hefty fines. We've even got state-sponsored hackers targeting our communications.
Oh, yeah.
We've got a lot to cover, so let's just dive right in.
Let's do it.
Okay, so first up, one story that really stood out to me was this massive data breach involving SL Data Services.
Oh, yeah, I saw that one.
Over 600,000 personal records exposed in an unsecured database. Full names, addresses, financial info, you name it, it was in there.
Oh, wow.
I mean, just the sheer scale of this breach is incredible.
Yeah, and this type of data breach is especially worrying because it gives attackers so much to work with when it comes to social engineering.
Right, like how does something like this make people more vulnerable to those kinds of attacks?
So attackers, they can use all of this personal info, all the stuff that they've gotten from the breach, to craft really convincing scams. You know, like phishing emails or text messages that look super legit.
Oh, so they can really like personalize it, like the victim.
Yeah, and make it seem really urgent and scare people into giving up even more info.
Ugh, it's scary how effective that stuff can be. So,
Right.
like, what can people do to protect themselves?
Well, I mean, the biggest thing is awareness, right? You got to be really careful about any emails, phone calls, text messages that you get, especially if they're asking for personal info or trying to rush you into doing something.
Yeah, that sense of urgency is always a red flag.
Always a red flag, yeah.
So, like, double check the sender's address. Look for any typos or anything suspicious. And if you're not sure, always verify the request through official channels.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's better to be safe than sorry.
Hmm.
Speaking of being safe, it's kind of mind-boggling to me that in 2024, some companies are still failing to use basic security measures like multi-factor authentication. We saw this recently with Geico and Travelers,
Oh,
two major insurance companies.
big names.
They got slapped with fines totaling over $11 million for data breaches.
Wow.
Geico's online quoting tool was exploited through credential stuffing, which is basically where attackers use stolen login credentials from other websites to try and break into your accounts. And Travelers, well, they didn't even have multi-factor authentication enabled in the first place.
I mean, come on, it's 2024.
I know, right?
The MFA is Cybersecurity 101.
Yeah, it's such a simple but effective way to protect your accounts. Like, it's basically having a second lock on your door. Even if someone has your password,
Right,
they still can't get in without that second factor.
right.
So if you're using a company or a service that doesn't offer MFA, you should definitely reach out and ask them to implement it. You have a right to demand better security for your data.
Absolutely. I mean, our data is so valuable these days.
Exactly.
Companies need to do more to protect it.
Absolutely. And that brings us back to that SL Data Services breach we talked about earlier.
Right.
I mean, having your driver's license number exposed is a big deal.
Huge.
It can lead to identity theft. Criminals can open accounts in your name, access your existing accounts, even file fraudulent tax returns.
Yeah, the damage can be really significant.
Yeah, so it's definitely something to be aware of. Okay, let's switch gears a bit and talk about something a little more cloak and dagger, the world of cyber espionage.
Ooh, espionage.
We've got a group called Salt Typhoon, a state-sponsored hacking group believed to be operating out of China that's been targeting telecommunications companies with a new backdoor malware called Ghost Spider.
Oh, wow. I hadn't heard about this one.
Yeah, it's pretty sophisticated stuff.
So what's this group all about?
Well, they've been on the radar of cybersecurity researchers for a while now. They've been known to target U.S. telecom giants and government agencies.
Oh, wow. So they're going after some pretty high-profile targets.
Yeah, and they were recently caught red-handed eavesdropping on the communications of over 150 victims.
Over 150.
Yeah, it's a pretty big deal.
Wow, that's a lot.
It raises some serious concerns about the security of our communication channels, you know.
Yeah, I mean, we rely on those networks for everything these days.
Exactly.
Personal conversations, business dealings, critical infrastructure operations.
It's all flowing through these networks. And if someone could just tap into those communications,
Yeah.
that's a big problem.
It is. Yeah, it makes you wonder how much we can really trust our communication channels.
Right. Like, are we really as secure as we think we are?
Good question.
All right, well, let's move on to another threat that's been making headlines lately. Ransomware.
I feel like that's all we hear about these days.
I know, right? But there was one attack in particular that caught my eye. It targeted a company called Blue Yonder, which provides supply chain management software.
Okay, so how did that impact people?
Well, it wasn't just Blue Yonder that was affected.
Yeah.
Their clients got hit hard, too, including some big names you might recognize, like Starbucks.
Oh, wow.
They were having trouble managing employee schedules because of this attack.
Really?
Yeah, and it's not just them. Morrisons and Sainsbury's.
The grocery stores?
Yeah, two major supermarket chains in the UK. They were also impacted by this attack.
Wow, so one attack on one company can really have a ripple effect across all these different industries.
Exactly. It highlights how interconnected our systems are.
Yeah.
And how dependent we are on these complex supply chains.
It's scary to think about what would happen if those systems went down.
Yeah. It makes you wonder about the software that your workplace relies on.
Yeah.
And what would happen if it suddenly became unavailable. Something to think about. All right, so let's talk about something a little more positive, or at least something we can actually do something about. Patching and updating software.
Oh, the joys of patching.
I know it's not the most glamorous topic.
No, but it's important.
It is super important.
Yeah.
I mean, we recently saw a vulnerability in Project Send software that was exploited for an entire year before it was discovered.
Wait, a whole year?
A whole year.
Oh, wow.
And during that time, attackers were creating rogue accounts and potentially deploying malware. And get this, even penetration testers. The good guys hired to find security holes were using this flaw for their work.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, it just goes to show that even security professionals can fall victim to these vulnerabilities if they're not diligent about patching.
Yeah, patching is everyone's responsibility.
Exactly. And this isn't an isolated incident either. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, recently issued a warning about patching a critical flaw in array network software. These types of vulnerabilities are constantly being discovered, and attackers are constantly looking for ways to exploit them.
So it's a never-ending battle
It is.
to stay ahead of the bad guys.
Yeah. So the message here is clear. Patch everything and patch it quickly.
Yes.
Don't wait for a major incident to happen before you take action.
I'm so glad you said that because so many people just ignore those update notifications.
I know, right?
And it's like the easiest thing you can do.
It's one of the simplest but most effective things you can do to improve your cybersecurity posture.
Definitely.
Okay, now for a story that's a little out of the ordinary, a U.S. company was hacked through their neighbor's unsecured Wi-Fi.
Wait, what?
Yeah, you heard that right.
How is that even possible?
Well, the group behind the attack, APT28, is a pretty sophisticated Russian hacking group known for their advanced cyber espionage operations. But in this case, they went for a much simpler approach. The target company's Wi-Fi was actually secure, but their neighbor's wasn't. So APT28 just hopped onto the neighbor's network, and from there, they were able to gain access to the target company's systems.
Oh, wow, that's sneaky.
It's like leaving your front door unlocked, even though you have a state-of-the-art security system.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how secure you are if your neighbor is leaving the door wide open.
Exactly. And this highlights a really important point. Cybersecurity is a shared responsibility.
Right, we all have a role to play in keeping each other safe.
It's not just up to IT professionals or cybersecurity experts. We all need to do our part to secure our systems, not just for ourselves, but for everyone around us.
It's like wearing a mask during a pandemic.
Yeah. You're not just protecting yourself, you're protecting everyone around you.
Exactly.
Okay, now let's talk about a threat that might seem a little old school in this day and age. USB devices.
Wait, you mean like those little flash drives?
Yeah, exactly.
I haven't used one of those in years.
Yeah, me neither. But they're still out there.
And they're still a threat.
They are, especially in critical infrastructure environments, where offline systems are common. These industries often rely on USB drives to transfer data, which makes them a prime target for attackers.
Okay, so how does that work?
Well, a recent example is the Sogu malware, which targeted industries in Egypt and Zimbabwe via infected USB drives.
So like someone plugs in an infected drive and it spreads to their system.
Exactly. And this malware can do some serious damage. It can steal data, spy on users, and even take control of entire systems.
Oh, wow. That's pretty scary.
It is.
So it's not just about losing a drive with sensitive data on it. It's
Oh,
about the potential for malware to spread through these devices.
and the scary part is that it can be really hard to detect.
You might plug in an infected drive without even realizing it.
Exactly.
And suddenly your whole system is compromised.
So what can people do to protect themselves?
Well, for individuals, the best advice is to be super cautious about what you plug into your computer.
Yeah, don't plug in any random USB drive you find lying around.
Exactly. You never know what could be lurking on that drive.
Good advice.
And for organizations, it's crucial to have strict device control policies in place and data sanitization procedures. You need to know what devices are connecting to your network and what data is being transferred.
Makes sense. Well, I think that covers a lot of ground for now. We've talked about data breaches, cyber espionage, ransomware, the importance of patching, and even the sneaky threat of USB devices.
It's a lot.
It is a lot. And let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll distill all of this into some key takeaways and talk about what you can actually do to protect yourself in this crazy digital world.
Sounds good.
See you in a bit.
See ya.
All right, welcome back to Calm Coding. So we've just gone through a whirlwind tour of the cybersecurity landscape.
And we've covered some pretty serious stuff.
We have
Data breaches,
espionage,
ransomware.
USB drives.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in.
It feels like we've been drinking from a fire hose of cybersecurity news.
Right.
So let's try to break it down a bit and distill all of this into some key takeaways for our listeners.
Sounds good.
First off, I think it's clear that data breaches are way more common than we think.
Yeah, I mean, we tend to only hear about the big ones.
Right, the ones that make headlines.
Yeah, the ones with millions of records exposed.
But there are countless smaller breaches happening every single day.
Exactly.
Like that unsecured database with 600,000 records.
Right.
Just sitting out there for anyone to find.
It makes you wonder.
It does.
How much of our personal information is just floating around in cyberspace?
Totally.
Completely vulnerable.
And that data is valuable.
It is.
I mean, it's a commodity.
Yeah.
Criminals can use it for identity theft, social engineering attacks. They could sell it on the dark web.
Yeah, there's a whole underground economy built around stolen data.
It's crazy. So what can we do about it? Is it even possible to protect our data in this environment?
Well, it's definitely a challenge.
Yeah.
But it's not impossible. There are things we can do.
Like what?
Well, for starters,
Yeah.
be mindful of what information you're sharing online.
Right.
Use strong passwords.
And enable multi-factor authentication wherever possible.
Yes. MFA is a must.
It is.
And you should also be checking your credit reports regularly.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Just to make sure there's no suspicious activity.
Okay, so that's good advice for individuals.
Yeah.
But what about businesses?
Well, for businesses, it's all about having strong security measures in place.
Yeah.
Things like data encryption,
Access controls.
regular security audits.
And they also need to have a plan for responding to data breaches, including notifying affected individuals and regulatory authorities.
It's not just about preventing breaches. It's also about how you respond when they do happen.
Right. Okay, so data breaches are a major concern. What else should our listeners be thinking about?
Well, we can't forget about cyber espionage.
That's right.
That Salt Typhoon case. It really highlights how nation-states are actively engaged in cyber attacks.
It's like something out of a spy movie.
It is, right?
But it's real life.
Yeah, and the stakes are high.
I mean, they're targeting everything.
Government agencies.
Private businesses.
Critical infrastructure.
Scary stuff.
It is. And these state-sponsored actors, they have a ton of resources and expertise.
Yeah, they're not just some kids in their basement.
Right. They're sophisticated and well-funded.
So how do we even begin to protect ourselves from these kinds of attacks?
Well, awareness is key.
Okay.
You need to understand the threat and who the potential targets are.
Right.
If you work in a sensitive industry,
Or have access to valuable data.
you're more likely to be a target.
Okay, so it's all about being proactive.
Exactly.
And taking steps to mitigate your risk.
So that might involve using encrypted communications
Implementing strict access controls.
or even conducting threat intelligence assessments.
To identify potential vulnerabilities.
Yeah. All right, you got to stay one step ahead of the bad guys.
All right, so we've got data breaches and cyber espionage. What else is keeping cybersecurity professionals up at night?
Well, ransomware is still a huge problem.
Yeah, that attack on Blue Yonder really showed how ransomware can cripple businesses.
Watch it small.
And the disruption doesn't stop at the target company.
Right. it ripples out.
Like Starbucks having trouble with employee schedules
Exactly.
because of that attack.
It highlights how interconnected everything is.
Yeah, one weak link can bring down the whole chain.
And the costs can be huge.
Yeah.
It's not just about paying the ransom.
Correct.
It's about the damage to your reputation.
The loss of productivity.
The potential legal liabilities.
It's a nightmare scenario.
It is. So you need to have a solid cybersecurity strategy in place.
Okay.
That includes regular data backups.
Incident response planning.
And employee training.
So don't wait for a ransomware attack to happen.
Yeah. Right. Be proactive.
Before you start thinking about cybersecurity.
An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Well said. Now, speaking of prevention.
Yeah.
We can't forget about patching and updating software.
Oh, yes. Patching.
I know it's not the most exciting topic.
But it's crucial.
It is.
Those updates might seem annoying.
Yeah.
But they often contain important security fixes.
That could prevent a major breach.
Like that Project Send vulnerability we talked about.
Right.
That was exploited for a whole year.
If everyone had just patched their software promptly.
Imagine how much damage could have been prevented.
That's a constant arms race.
It is.
Between attackers finding vulnerabilities and developers patching them.
And unfortunately, attackers have the advantage.
How so?
Well, they only need to find one vulnerability.
While defenders need to patch them all.
It's a tough job.
It is. So the key takeaway here is patch everything.
And patch it quickly.
Don't wait.
Don't procrastinate.
Make it a routine part of your cybersecurity hygiene.
Absolutely.
Okay, and this brings us to a really important point. Cybersecurity is a shared responsibility. What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean that it's not just up to IT professionals
or cybersecurity experts
to keep us safe.
Okay.
We all have a role to play.
Individuals, businesses, governments.
Everyone.
So it's about taking ownership
of our own cybersecurity
and doing what we can
to protect ourselves and those around us.
So that might involve using strong passwords,
being cautious about phishing emails,
reporting suspicious activity,
talking to your friends and family about cybersecurity best practices.
It's about creating a culture of cybersecurity
where everyone is aware of the risks.
Then takes steps to mitigate them.
Because we're all in this together.
We are.
Our individual actions can have a ripple effect on the security of the entire digital ecosystem.
Well said. All right, so we've covered a lot of ground today. Let's shift gears now and talk about some practical steps our listeners can take to improve their cybersecurity posture. So we've talked about all these threats, Katie, but what can our listeners actually do to protect themselves?
It all starts with awareness, I think.
Yeah.
The more you understand about the threats out there, the better equipped you'll be to defend yourself.
Makes sense.
And that's really what we're trying to do here on Calm Coding, is give you the knowledge to stay safe online.
Exactly. We're not trying to scare anyone.
Yeah.
But we do want to empower our listeners to take control of their own cybersecurity.
Right. And sometimes that can be as simple as just taking a moment to ask yourself a few questions before you click on a link or open an attachment.
What kinds of questions?
Like, do I trust the sender of this email?
Yeah.
Or does this website look legitimate?
Or going back to our earlier discussion, would I plug in a random USB drive I found?
Exactly. Hopefully not.
Hopefully not.
After today's episode, it's all about building those good cybersecurity habits.
Yeah.
Just taking a moment to think before you act.
Can make a huge difference.
It really can.
Because ultimately, we're all responsible for protecting our own data, our own privacy, our own digital lives.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
So to wrap things up, I want to leave our listeners with a challenge.
Okay. I like it.
After everything we've discussed today, what's one thing you will do differently to protect your data?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Maybe it's enabling multi-factor authentication on your accounts.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Or being more careful about what links you click on.
Or finally patching that outdated software.
Whatever it is, take that step. Make a commitment to improving your cybersecurity posture.
And share it with us.
Yeah, let us know.
We'd love to hear what you're doing to stay safe in the digital world.
You can find us on social media.
Yeah, hit us up with your cybersecurity wins.
You want to hear about it.
Because knowledge is power.
It is.
And the more we know about cybersecurity, the better equipped we'll be to face whatever threats come our way.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Ah.
Thanks for joining us on this cybersecurity deep dive here on Calm Coding.
Thanks, everyone.
Stay safe out there.
And stay informed.
And remember,
Stay vigilant.
Until next time,